This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Rabbi Glatstein, we are this morning the cover of Chodesh Adar. We are recording. We are very privileged and honored to invite our Orach HaKavod, Rabbi Glatstein Shlita. Rabbi Glatstein, those of you who know, not only is a America, it's wonderful.
You know, throughout history, there's one mitzvah. It's a very underrated mitzvah. You would not necessarily have expected that this mitzvah will be the main battleground between Esav and Yaakov, between Haman and Klal Yisrael. It's not a mitzvah we always speak about or focus on. But one thing we know about Megillas Esther, we know Esther Ruach HaKodesh number. Esther was said with Ruach HaKodesh, which means that every single detail in the Megillah was written with Ruach HaKodesh. Every word needs to be there. Every letter is to help us appreciate the miracle of Hashem. So there's one detail in the Megillah which is, it seems like an unnecessary detail. You know, when the Megillah introduces Esther Hamalka, it says that Esther had a very unusual life experience. Chazal say that Mordechai took Esther lebas, ki ein la avaim. She had no father and she had no mother. Esther was an orphan. Esther had no av and she had no aim. But the Megillah says more than that. Esther wasn't your average orphan. It says, Uvemoisa viha v'ima, and when her father and mother died. So the Gemara asks, obviously if she had no father and mother, Mordechai must have taken her when her father and mother died. And the Gemara says something even more than that. The Gemara says, not only did Esther's father and mother die, but when Esther was conceived, her father died, and when she was born, her mother died. In other words, she never saw her parents. Esther never saw her father and mother. Okay, so the first question is, why does the Megillah have to tell us that? What difference does it make that Esther never saw her father and mother? Is it relevant that Esther never saw her father and mother? But the Medrash says even more. The Medrash says that Hashem swore, Hashem took a shvuah, that He will only redeem Klal Yisrael through somebody who has no father and has no mother. Why? Why does the Redeemer have to come through someone who has no father and someone who has no mother? I want to share with you a very interesting Gemara Masechta Tainis. The Gemara Masechta Tainis tells us about a tzaddik by the name of Rabbi Chanina ben Doiso. Rabbi Chanina ben Doiso was very poor. He was so poor he cannot support his family. And his wife said, Ganikshine, enough already, I can't take it anymore. You're a tzaddik, why don't you pull some of your tzaddik stuff and daven, maybe Hashem will give us some food. So Rabbi Chanina ben Doiso davened, and a hand came down from Shemayim and handed him a golden leg. So he said, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I need. A golden leg. A golden leg of a table. Rabbi Chanina ben Doiso had a dream. And in his dream he saw that in Olam Haba, all the tzaddikim were sitting on a two-legged table, a three-legged table, and he was sitting on a two-legged table. And he interpreted the meaning of the dream as follows. He interpreted the meaning of the dream that the fact that Hashem gave him and his family a golden leg means that Hashem gave it to them, but it's coming out of his spiritual bank account. It's coming out of his Olam Haba. He would have been eating at a three-legged table in Gan Eden, but instead Hashem gave a golden leg, and now he lost the chelek of his Olam Haba. And then the Gemara says, we have a Masorah that the second mirror. So what did Rabbi Chanina ben Doiso do? He was mispalel. He davened that Hashem should take back the leg, and a hand came and took back the leg. Says the Gemara, the second miracle was greater than the first miracle, because we have a tradition: heaven gives, heaven doesn't take back. So the fact that Hashem took back the leg was a bigger miracle than the fact that Hashem gave the leg. And it's a very peculiar Gemara. What's the meaning of this? That all the tzaddikim in Olam Haba eat on a 3-legged table, and Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa was only eating on a 2-legged table. And what does it mean that the second miracle is greater than the first miracle? Hashem only gives, He doesn't take. Isn't there a pasuk? Hashem Yonasan v'Hashem lokach. Hashem gives and Hashem takes. Why would the second miracle be greater than the first miracle? So here's the deal. In the times of Purim, we had a very powerful enemy. His name was Haman. And if you look in the Targum on the Megillah, Haman was coming bolstered and supported by a very big zechus. So what kind of zechus was Haman being bolstered by? He was coming bolstered by the zechus of his great Zayda, Esav. We know Haman came from Esav. Zechus of Esav. What zechus does Esav have? But Chazal tell us that even though Esav was a Rasha, nevertheless there was one area where Esav was great in a way that nobody could compare to. We know that Esav was the all-time greatest Mechabed Av. Nobody honored their father like Esav. In fact, Reb Shimon Gamliel would say that I don't hold a candle to Esav. You know what that means? In America, there's an expression. You know, in America, they speak a different language. It's called English. You ever hear of English? I don't hold... That was a joke. That's another thing. We gotta work on the humor also, you know? Now, I know you don't think American humor is that funny. It requires many years of training to appreciate American humor. But Esav does not compare. Esav does not compare to the Rav Shimon Gamliel said that he does not compare to the kibbud avayim of Esav. You know why? Because when Esav would honor his father, he would put on special begadim. And Rav Shimon Gamliel says, I just wear my regular clothing when I honor my father. There was no one in the history of the world who honored their father like Esav. There's nobody who honored their father like Esav. So we're in big trouble. Because if Haman is coming to destroy us, and he is being bolstered and he's supported by the kibbud avayim of Esav Harasha, then how are we going to overcome him? So we got a problem. So comes the Rebbeinu Shalom, and the Rebbeinu Shalom orchestrates the following situation, the following scenario. And this principle that we're about to learn is the great Yesod that is taught by Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshutz, an amazing Yesod. The Gemara tells us in Masechta Brachos, Chishev lasois mitzvah. If somebody thinks to do a mitzvah, v'nenas, and they can't do it, they have extenuating circumstances. Let's say a person says, today I'm going to go be mevaker chal, I'm going to go visit somebody who's ill. And for whatever reason, there's a road closure, and they can't do the mitzvah. V'nenas, and they have an oinus, mala olav kilo aso, it's considered as if you did it. I'm sure you heard of that idea, that if somebody planned on being Mekayim the mitzvah, and they tried to be Mekayim the mitzvah, and they couldn't do it, circumstances were beyond their control, Hashem considers it like you did the mitzvah. Says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshutz, actually, if you wish you could do a mitzvah, and you don't get around to it because you didn't have the opportunity to do it, not only does Hashem consider it like you did the mitzvah, it's considered as if you did the mitzvah in an even greater way than if you would have done the mitzvah actually. Why is that? Says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshutz, when you do a mitzvah, it's always limited by human shortcoming. Let's say I do a perfect mitzvah. Let's say I come and I learn for an hour. Did you learn with simcha? Did you learn with avas Hashem? Did you learn with yiras Hashem? Did you learn completely l'shem shamayim? Or were you hoping your Rebbe would see you, or your friend would see you and think you're a big tzaddik, and maybe you'll get a little covet out of it also? Even if you do a mitzvah in the best possible way, it will never be a perfect mitzvah. However, if you don't do the mitzvah, but you wish you could have done the mitzvah, and now Hashem gifts you the mitzvah, Hashem says, well, if I'm gifting you the mitzvah, I'm going to gift you my kind of mitzvah. I'm going to gift you a perfect mitzvah. I'm going to gift you a mitzvah in a way that I am machshav the mitzvah. I'm going to give you the most beautiful incredible, powerful mitzvah ever accomplished. So Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshutz says, actually, if a person would like to do a mitzvah and doesn't get around to it because they can't, and Hashem gives you the mitzvah, that in a certain sense is greater than actually doing the mitzvah. Says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshutz, there's a man by the name of Haman. Haman is supported by the highest actual fulfillment of Kibbud Av in the history of the world. So how are we going to overcome that? How are we going to counteract that? How are we going to fight that? There's only one way. We need to have someone who can't do Kibbud Avim. Not only could she not do Kibbud Avim, she was never able to do Kibbud Avim. She was nobody ever lacked a father and mother more than Esther. Because when she was conceived, her father died. When she was born, her mother, she never even saw her parents. So she grew up her whole life wishing, yearning, hoping. Somehow she wished, if only I had the opportunity to honor my father and mother, I wish I could have. So Hashem gifted Esther the greatest madrega of Kibbud Avim in history, and with that she was able to overcome Haman. Says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshutz, why did the wife of Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa, why couldn't she take it anymore that they didn't have money? What do you think? The wife of Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa wanted a nicer chandelier in her house? You think she wanted a nicer pair of shoes? That's why she told him, I can't take it anymore. I need money? Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa's wife had a problem. You know what her problem was? She saw everyone in the neighborhood, when Aniyim would knock on the door, would give them $20 bills, $50 bills. Every time somebody needed a favor, everyone else in the neighborhood had money to do chesed with, but she had no money to do chesed with. So she felt she's going to go up to Olam Haba. Her husband is a big Talmid Chacham, so he'll have the leg of Torah. Her husband davens all day and all night. She'll have the leg of Avodah, but when they get upstairs, they're going to be missing the third leg of Gemilas Chasadim. You know why? Because they have no money. They have no food to eat. Not that she has nothing to eat, she has nothing to give. So she thought she made a mistake. She thought that when you can't do a mitzvah, then in Shamayim you're going to be lacking the mitzvah. Says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshutz, she didn't know that once Hashem gave her the money, now she'll be missing the leg. Because now when she does the chesed, it's not going to be in such a perfect oifen. She was actually better off not having it and wishing she did it. This is a very important yesod in general, especially in yeshiva life. Sometimes a person says, I'm not as good as this bacher. If only I had the kishroinos of this bacher, then I would reach this level. I would learn 100 more blat. I would do much better in my learning. If only I could be like him, or only I could be like them. But it's a big mistake. Because in a certain sense, if a person doesn't have the ability, but wishes they could, so if you have two people, one does and one doesn't but wishes they could, who's on a higher level? It's not necessarily the one that does. In a certain sense, it's the one that doesn't and wishes they could. And that's always important to bear in mind. Whenever someone sees someone doing a mitzvah, if they could do it, of course they should do it themselves. And if they can't do it, it has a lot of value in Shamayim when a person says, I can't do it. I wish I could do it. Now, you should know, if you really wish you could do it, and you really want to do it, and you're going to try to do it, you'll see, you will be able to do it. Because the Rebbeinu Shalom will give you siyata d'shmaya. But even if for whatever reason you never get around to it, you're really not able to do it, chishev lasois mitzvah venenas, if you think to do a mitzvah and circumstances don't allow you, the Rebbeinu Shalom will consider it like you actually did it, but more than that, like you did it ba'oifen hayoser tov, in a way even greater than if you would have actually done it. And Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshutz says this is a yesod in many areas in life. Bisman hazeh we don't have tchelas. Arizal says there won't be tchelas until Mashiach comes. But the Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshutz says every morning when you put on tzitzis, you should say, Ribbon Shalom, I wish I had tchelas. Then you will be rewarded as if you wore tchelas. We don't have it. We can't get it. So, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't want to do it. When I was a bachar, now you wonder, where am I from? I'm from, there's, the continents? There's Europe, there's Asia, there's Africa, there's Antarctica, South America, and New York. I'm from the continent of New York. And there's a country in New York, it's called Brooklyn. You ever hear of the country of Brooklyn? So I come from the country of Brooklyn. And when I grew up, there was a big tzaddik living in Brooklyn, Harav Avigdor Miller, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha. And Hashem gave me a good idea when I was a bachar. I used to walk to Harav Avigdor Miller 50 minutes on Shabbos, 50. I personally heard many things from Rav Avigdor Miller. And Rav Miller has a sefer on tefillah where he writes as follows. One of the main reasons why we daven is to activate this yisoid of chishev lasois mitzvah v'nenas mala olav kiloasa. I'll give you a few examples that he says. Let's say a big doctor. How many people could this big doctor heal in one day? How many patients does he see? 10, 15, 20? So at the end of the day, even though he's accomplishing a lot, he's only healing 10, 15, 20 people. But if when you say Rifa'enu, you think Ribarisham, I wish I would be able to cure all the Chaylei Amo Yisrael, then you're rewarded as if you cured all the Chaylei. What can you do? You're not a doctor. You don't have medicine. You don't know how to heal everyone. But you wish you could have. And Hashem considers it like you did. Moreover, a person could go up to Shamayim La'achar Me'er Ve'esrim, and Hashem's going to reward you as if you built Yerushalayim and brought Mashiach. So what do you mean? But I lived in the Galus, and Yerushalayim wasn't built, and I didn't bring Mashiach. Yeah, but when I said V'Yerushalayim Mircha Barachmim Tashov, I really wished I could help build Yerushalayim. I really wish I could bring Mashiach. So Hashem says, you wanted it, you yearned for it, you thought about doing it, you couldn't do it, it wasn't up to you. You are credited, you are rewarded as if you did it. Rav Miller writes, this is one of the most important aspects of davening. To at least want to do all the great things, and whether a person can or not, it's not always up to us. But now I want to focus on why the battle in the times of Purim was dependent upon which mitzvah. Think about it. Haman is bolstered, is supported by the mitzvah of Kibbud Av. Esther has to counteract Haman, not with actually fulfilling Kibbud Av, but with wanting to fulfill Kibbud Av. On the other hand, there's another extreme of this. Rabbi Glatstein would say that our generation has an opportunity that he never saw before in the history of Klal Yisrael. There are people, let's say my parents, my father didn't know his grandparents. My father never met his grandparents. My grandparents, my father's parents, are Holocaust survivors. My grandfather was in Auschwitz. My grandmother had a masquerade and hid herself in the forest. Their parents were killed in the Holocaust. My grandmother's father was the last Rav of the city of Sachachav. He was killed in the Warsaw Ghetto. My grandfather's parents did not survive the Holocaust. So my father didn't know his grandparents. I grew up, I knew my grandparents, and I knew many of my great-grandparents. And that's a new phenomenon. I'm sure many of you, Baruch Hashem, many people have the great blessing, they have parents. Some people even have a great bracha, they have grandparents, and some people even know their great-grandparents. It wasn't always like this. It's like a more recent phenomenon. And Rabbi Aaron Leib Steinman said, in the generation before Mashiach comes, Hashem gives us, my parents, who are grandparents, were taking care of their elderly parents. That's a rare phenomenon. It's a new phenomenon. Rabbi Glatstein said in the generation before Mashiach comes, since Esav's zechus is kibbud avayim, in order to counteract Esav, Hashem gives the final generation more opportunities for kibbud avayim, in order to counteract Esav. So the truth is, there could be two different types of situations a person could have in life. Sometimes, unfortunately, a person doesn't have the bracha of parents. Then they should think like Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshutz. You know what? Hashem gave the opportunity that I wish I had parents to honor and be Mekayim Kibbud Avayim. And if somebody has grandparents and great-grandparents, they should think Hashem is giving extra opportunity to be Mekayim Kibbud Avayim. But the Nakuda, the area of the battle between Yisrael and Esav, is the inyan of Kibbud Avayim. What's so important about Kibbud Avayim? Why is that, like the final battle between Esav and Yaakov? I saw in the Sefer Alehi Goyin, in the name of Shimon Schwab, an amazing insight. When Adam Arishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, he ruined the world. Had it not been for eating from the Eitz Hadas, people wouldn't have to go to work. People wouldn't get sick. People wouldn't die. Adam Arishon ruined all the world. And you know what? He even downgraded the mitzvahs. Even the mitzvahs were affected by the sin of Adam Arishon. There's only one mitzvah in the Torah that always remained on the level that it was created with before Adam Arishon ate from the Eitz Hadas. Kibbud Avayim. You know why? Because Adam Arishon, he had everything in the world. He just didn't have two things. He didn't have a father, and he didn't have a mother. He was Yitzir Kapav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, the mitzvah of Kibbud Avayim retains its status of the way it was created in the Shamayim. That's why Reb Schwab says that when Yaakov Avinu came to honor his father Yitzchak, what smell did Yitzchak smell? Reach Gan Eden. Because you know what Kibbud Avayim smells like? It's the one smell that smells like Gan Eden before the sin of Adam Arishon. And therefore, if there's one mitzvah that could bring the world back to the way it's supposed to be, to Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem, to the way Hashem created it, if there's one mitzvah that could usher in Mashiach, if there's one mitzvah that could elevate us to the highest possible level, the final battleground between Yaakov and Esav revolves around the mitzvah of Kibbud Avayim. And especially Purim time, according to Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshutz, Hashem had to orchestrate a special scenario for Esther. That means that the greatest zechus that Klal Yisrael had in the times of Purim was not what they did, it's what they wanted to do. So Baruch Hashem, if you could actually do it, Amalek, it's very interesting, it just occurred to me. Do you know what Siman in Shulchan Aruch, Hilchas Kibbud Avayim is? It's Siman Reish Mem, Gematria Amalek. Hilchos Kibbud Avayim in Shulchan Aruch is Siman Reish Mem. Because you know what Amalek is here to say? Amalek is here to say Midar Dar. Not Dar Lidar Yishalach Masecha. They're coming to create a sever in the generations. So this month, we know what our task is. We have to overcome Haman. We have to overcome Amalek. Siman Reish Mem. Hilchas Kibbud Avayim, and in that zechus, Be'ez Hashem, we should be able to give the final knockout punch to Esav, and we should all be zoicha to the Gula Shlema and see Yeshuas v'Nachamos in this month. Thank you for listening. Afreilichen Adar and Afreilichen Purim. Thank you very much.
Wunderbar.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.